What if I told you the world's most common definitions of art, fine art, and applied art don't actually make sense? What if I told you they were built on contradictions, classism, and cultural naivety? And that artists, collectors, and even schools are arguing inside a broken framework. Today, we're fixing that. Welcome back to the Two Black Ravens Foundation. I'm your host, Adam. I'm a veteran, professional photographer, and a believer that art is in fact the universal language for healing. But before we dive in, hit subscribe and share this with your friends, family, and fellow veterans. Every click helps us grow our mission so we can keep teaching, creating, and giving back to our wounded, injured, and ill service members and veterans. The video started because Heartless Leather asked a deceptively simple question. What's the difference between art and decoration? Now, I thought I had the answer, then I dug deeper, and I realized that the definitions we all learned are fundamentally flawed. So today we're going to do something a little bold. We're going to be rewriting the definitions from the ground up, clearly, logically, and with respect to every culture, craft, and creative practice. At least that's my attempt. Now, most people were taught that art is created for intellectual and emotional expression. Decoration is to enhance and beautify space, chosen to complement its surroundings, primarily based off of color coordination, but it's really there to create an atmosphere. Now, fine art is created for aesthetic and intellectual depth, but serves no practical function. And applied art is decorative art that serves a practical function with artistic design. At first glance, it seems clean and easy, but here's the problem. These definitions contradict one another. If art must include intellectual and emotional expression, then applied art, like pottery, leatherwork, jewelry, furniture, isn't art. Because most applied art doesn't contain explicit intellectual expression. But that same institution that teaches art equals expression also insists that applied art is a subcategory of art. That's a philosophical train wreck. And here's another issue. Intellectual depth is culturally defined. Western academies once said that African masks, indigenous carvings, Navajo pottery, Hawaiian kapa cloth, and Japanese ceramics lacked intellectual depth. Now they're considered masterworks. The definition wasn't just wrong, it was culturally naive. Let's lay out the contradictions plainly. Art equals intellectual and emotional expression. Applied art equals functional objects with artistic intent. Many functional objects do not have intellectual expression, yet they are still categorized as art. That's like saying a vehicle must have 4 wheels, except motorcycles, which also count. It's inconsistent, it's elitist, and it punishes entire traditions where craft is culture. This is why artists argue online. The framework itself is broken. A good piece of art isn't just pretty. It makes you think, reflect, and even feel something. It's very similar to that of active listening. Message transmitted, message received, message understood or internalized, message response if necessary. Art is intentional expression, communicated to the receiver, that being you, which then you internalize, that's the interpretation, which then makes you think, the thought, which makes you feel something. At our last art show back in May of this year, we were told that it wasn't very successful because half the people walked in, saw the first piece, read the art description, and immediately walked out. My response to that concern was, and still is today, we had 100% success because that final feeling, whether it was anger, uncomfortableness, anxiety, or even frustration, was an emotional response to the controversial art being shown. Now, I've sat down, looked at the contradictions, and tried to rebuild the entire structure to be hopefully logically consistent, culturally inclusive, artist and collector friendly, and applicable across all creative disciplines. Here's the corrected definitions. 1. Art. Art is the intentional creation of visual, auditory, or experiential work meant to communicate, express, or symbolize meaning. Art must involve intent and either expression, meaning, or symbolism. Not all three, not intellectual only, not emotional only. That removes the elitism and honors the global cultural practices. All right, 2, for decoration. Decoration is visual work created primarily to enhance an environment regardless of meaning. Decorations can be beautiful, it can be creative, it can even be handmade, but its primary purpose is atmosphere, not communication. What about fine art? Fine art is created primarily for expression, symbolism, or meaning, with no required functional purpose. This includes paintings, sculptures, installation, performance, and certain photography. Now, we're not talking wedding photos, family portraits, editorial photos, or boudoir here. That's a conversation for a later date. The mission here is expression. So what about applied art? Applied art is the fusion of function and artistic design where the object serves a purpose and carries meaning, symbolism, or expressive intent. That includes leatherwork, pottery, fashion, furniture, architecture, jewelry, metalwork, and then some. A belt with no symbolic or expressive intent is just craft. A belt engraved with meaning, heritage, or narrative equals applied art. Now, everything, as far as I can see, fits. No contradictions, no elitism, no cultural blind spots that I'm aware of. If you find one, leave a comment in the section below. Again, a good piece of art isn't just visually pleasing, it communicates. It makes you think, reflect, and feel something you didn't expect. So, let me address some common arguments that we probably will hear. But anything can be art if the creator says so. Wrong. Intent alone is not enough. Communication or symbolism still must exist. All right, what about, but mass-produced pieces can be art? Sure, but rarely. There are times, like a print of Vincent van Gogh isn't an original Van Gogh, but selling prints of original work is still valid. Accessibility doesn't equal loss of meaning. All right, what about the argument, but some artists make beautiful work without deep meaning? Then it's decoration or functional craft. Still valuable, just a different mission. Think about the list of photos I was speaking about earlier. I would say that kind of falls in that category. All right, final one. But what if something is functional and expressive? That's applied art. Leather work with a story equals applied art. Leather work with only aesthetics equals craft. Let's go back in time for a minute. It's the late 1800s. You're in Paris, France. Art academies declared what counted as art. They praised polished realism and dismissed anything outside their worldview. Then along came Impressionists who challenged the system. Critics called it unfinished, childish, even decorative. Fast forward roughly 80 years into the future, and abstract expressionism emerges. Pollock, Rothko, Newman explode on the scene. This time, the elite said genius, revolutionary. Not because the meaning changed, but because the power structure changed. The lesson is brutally simple. If you let institutions define art, you inherit their contradictions and their political influences. If you define art through mission and intent, you begin to see the full picture. So, Heartless Leather and everyone watching, here's the truth that the best that I can define it at this moment in time. Art isn't defined by elitist academic formulas. It's defined by intent, purpose, and mission. Fine art expresses, applied art serves and expresses, craft serves beautifully, and decoration designs for atmosphere. None are lesser, but they are not the same. If this video helped clarify the chaos, hit like, subscribe, and share this with another artist, creator, or veteran who deserves a clear language for what they create. And remember, We don't need more perfect art. We need more honest art. I'll see you next week.